in a sense, like, not only was it not like a come up for me, but it actually hurt me because I have the daycare center at Cornerstone, which is funded by the Department of Education. And so it created a conflict of interest for me. I had to step down as the executive director of my daycare center because he had like emergency surgery, and the doctors had said like if he had so much as sneeze, like he would have died. It was by an artery, and he didn't trust anybody except for my great grandfather. Eric is like a walking contradiction. Like in front of the podium, he's very serious. Behind the scenes, he's just not. He's like a kid.
Jasmine, camera B, Mark, take one.
There's something almost magical about being a naive child. Sometimes it's a gift. Other times...
It's a veil.
Ooh. Tell me about your childhood, Jasmine.
So naivete, yeah. Well, I'm a Pisces, so everything for me is magical. I live very much in my head. I feel very much connected to this world. I feel like I'm so in tune with the energy of the world, and introverted, sensitive, empath, all of that good stuff. Love animals, don't like to be around crowds of people. I get very anxious if there's too much energy around. I'm very quiet, very much the opposite of how my professional career has gone.
You said as a little girl you were seen but not heard. How did that silence influence the voice that you now have today that's loud and it's big and people know it?
Yeah, I think I even said in the book that like I literally prayed one day to be like good with words, good with being able to challenge people, because I felt like I was always seen, not heard. I remember wanting to be a good debater. I've always wanted to be a good debater. And anytime somebody said something to me, I couldn't find the words to respond. So I literally prayed for it. I was just like, I want to be good with words. And and then one day I woke up and I was good with words.
You grew up in Brooklyn, right? Sunset Park?
I grew up in Sunset Park, yeah.
And from my research, you're biracial?
Mm-hmm. My mother, my mother's Puerto Rican and Filipino, and my dad is Black.
Yeah, and it seemed like as I was reading the book, you struggle with that. You struggle with the tug of war between your identity, your Blackness, your Hispanic roots, being both Black and Puerto Rican, but not feeling accepted by either side. Tell me about how that kind of shaped you, and give me some stories or examples of what made you feel that way.
So one of the examples in the book was like my hair, right? I used to have really coily hair. I actually had an afro growing up all the way until like 7 years old. And like my mom didn't know how to manage my hair. So she used to put a bow around my head to like, so you could tell the difference between me and my brother. And I hated it. I hated the fact that she would literally just put a bow and like that was it, keep it moving out the door. So I always had this nappy fro. And then my aunt, Titi Kelly, had a hair salon in Sunset Park. So one day they took me in. I might have been 8, 9 years old, and they permed my hair, and it just was never the same. They took all my coils out, and my hair was like dead from there. So I felt resentful about that because I felt like they were trying to like perm the Black out of me. And then I grew up, at that time, I mean, still kind of, Sunset Park is like predominantly Hispanic people. So like, it's funny, I looked Dominican. Nobody ever thought I was Puerto Rican, they thought I was Dominican. And they used to call me Brillo Queen in school. The Brillo Queen, because they used to say my hair was like a Brillo pad. So yeah, like very mean in school. And then on the Black side, I was too light skinned, always. Too light skinned. My grandmother, my entire life, did not treat me well. And my grandmother was like dashiki wearing, and it's funny because I don't even mention her in the book, but my grandmother on my father's side, she was huge, like 300 pounds, soul food, always making soul food, never invited me to her house to eat. You know, I used to live down the hill from her. Like I could throw a rock to her house. She used to make collard greens, mac and cheese, all the things. Never invited me to her house to eat.
So you think she didn't accept you either?
Yeah, I think there was an element of it, you know. She didn't like my mother. So she never accepted my mother. So, yep. But then my cousins who were dark skinned, literally were the same age, they'd be in her house eating every night.
I want to stick to your mother, and there's going to be a lot of quotes this interview because I'm really trying to prove a point that we want to know about Jasmine Ray today.
Sure.
So one of the quotes you said is, "My mother carried a sharp scissors in her purse. Every time she went to cut my nails and found out none to cut, she poked each of my fingers. The pain only deepened. Eventually I grew numb to the sting and to everything." Now this is, I wasn't supposed to be here. You know, we have a reputation for deep emotional stories. I want you to spend some time talking about the dynamic of you and your mother's relationships and what that felt like growing up as a child.
So it's still unique to this day. And it's funny, I don't know many people that have great relationships with their mothers for some reason. I think a lot of people struggle with, like, especially mother-daughter relationships. My experience is you grow up in a Puerto Rican household, the boys always get treated better than the girls. The girls are taught to cook, to wash dishes, you know, we're taught to do certain things, the boys aren't. The boys get treated like kings. So, yeah, I don't know. She was very hard on me growing up. You know, in hindsight, I am grateful for her being hard on me, but at the same time, she made me numb to pain, like literally emotional pain, physical pain. I was just saying on my way here that I'm in the middle of tattoo removal, and they gave me like a squeegee, and you know, they were like, "Do you need a break?" And I was like, "No, just finish the process." Like I was like, finished. I didn't feel nothing. I'm very good with pain, physical, emotional, or otherwise.
How do you think, you know, well, let me go back. I've seen some interviews and you talk positive about your dad. Black, strong man. I know he took you to the Carolinas and all those wonderful things you had with him. Explain the difference between your relationship with your mother and your relationship with your dad.
So that was the dope thing about being raised by my mother and my father. They were two completely different human beings. My dad was very much like the nurturer, and my mom was the disciplinary. Like, even though my dad was a serious man, he was always just a lot lighter than my mom. But, you know, again, in hindsight, especially now being an adult and being a mother, you appreciate a mother that, like, held it down, right? Like, held the job down, held the house down. Like, I never lived in a dirty house. We never had McDonald's for dinner. There was always fresh cooked meals. We didn't go without, but that's because my mother's militant. You know, my mother's very much like, she's organized, but she's cold. My dad, he worked for UPS, he worked for USPS, he worked for FedEx, but always like in a cycle of like losing a job, not maintaining a job. But at the same time, he was home all the time. So he was playful. I was always in sports. You know, you name it, I was outside, literally, like just competing with the boys, because it was always me, my dad, and my brother. So I grew up like a tomboy, just very competitive, always playing sports, always trying to outrun somebody, outplay somebody. But that's because I was raised by my dad. So my mother was at work holding it down. My dad was always home. So, but it was a good dynamic because, you know, I got the warmth of my dad and the seriousness of my mom. And collectively, you know, I don't think I could have had a better childhood.
I know you talk about your village a lot in the book, you know, specifically Aunt Lily, Uncle Nilo. What was that like? And sorry if I pronounced any of those names wrong. You could correct me.
Titi Pili.
Okay.
And Tio Melo.
There we go. How do those people help you find peace, especially with the battles you were going through with your mother? I always love, if you know anything about me, and my book is always about village community. So talk to me a little bit about your village and your titis and your Theo helping you throughout your battles.
Yeah, when my parents divorced, you know, every other year I was in a different state. So 6th grade, I was in New York. 7th grade, I was in North Carolina. 8th grade, I was back in New York. 9th grade, I was back in North Carolina. So But when my mother moved on really quickly after my dad, I mean, I think like months later, she was with somebody. So when I came back to New York from North Carolina, there was this man. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not moving in with you. So I moved in with my aunt and my uncle, who didn't have any kids. And, you know, in a sense, I feel bad, of course, that they could never have kids, but like I was like their daughter still to this day. So my uncle raised me, my aunt raised me, the village raised me. So when I came back to New York, I moved in with my aunt and my uncle. And because of all the movement and the divorce and, you know, it was painful. So I just shut down. So I wasn't talking. I just was very like bland with people. And so my aunt used to write me letters, like handwritten letters, leave them on the pillow. You know, hey, I understand what you're going through because this is what happened to me when I was a kid. And like I'd read them, and I guess maybe at the time, I don't think I reacted. I don't think I ever responded, but like I would read them, I would cry myself to sleep. And little by little, like it like made me want to come back, you know? And then at the same time, my uncle, he's a 10th degree black belt, and he owned a karate school in Brooklyn called Sunset Park Martial Arts. So when I moved in with him, he was like, if you're gonna live with me, you go into the dojo. So I didn't have a choice. I was like, all right. So I was already athletic. So I was like, yeah, let's go to the dojo, you know? And because I already had so much, like I had a lot of anger as a kid, fighting was like, it was my thing. So it was easy. It was easy to fight. And I was good at it too. I never lost a tournament. I might have competed in a dozen tournaments from the ages of 13 all the way through like 25, never lost.
I know, well, I'm grateful for you that your village and your family helped build this strong character and the person you are today, but you also come from a powerful lineage, right? Reverend Sandy D. Ray was a close friend of Dr. Martin Luther King, your great-grandfather. How does his legacy shape the woman you are today?
Man, so cornerstone. My entire life, even as a kid, something has been always pulling me back to Cornerstone. I can't even, you know, there was the street renaming when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. And then when I was a teenager, I might have been like 14, 17, I visited Cornerstone and everybody was like, oh my God, you know, where's your family? Where is everybody? You know, they said, this is yours. Like your great grandfather built this estate. His Bible, his robe, all these things are yours. Like, and I was just like, I wasn't interested. And then, cause there was a disconnect. So my grandfather, I didn't even know him. My dad's father, I didn't know him at all. And neither did my dad. So it was really my great grandfather who practically raised my dad along with his mother. Cause his dad was just, it's interesting when you grow up with someone that powerful, you know, that has that much prestige. Like, I hate to say this, like, you know, no disrespect to those who are alive, but like, you know, his kids didn't really amount to much, which is interesting because he was such a powerful man. And I think my grandfather was like on drugs really early and just was absent, did not raise my dad. So, but my dad was always at Cornerstone. So my dad was raised around my great grandfather. And my dad would tell me stories about, you know, the Rockefellers going to Cornerstone, Jackie Robinson when he needed help. And Reverend Dr. Sandy Ray grew up with, not grew up, but went to Morehouse with Martin Luther King Sr. So Martin Luther King Jr. knew my great grandfather as a kid. So he always called him Uncle Sandy. He didn't know that they weren't even related by blood. So, you know, throughout his whole life, even when he became this, like, you know, famous activist, he was calling my great grandfather Uncle Sandy. And every time, you know, Cornerstone had something, Martin Luther King Jr. was there. So when the first assassination attempt on Martin Luther King Jr. was in Harlem and he was stabbed at a book signing, and he had like emergency surgery. And, you know, the doctors had said, like, if he had so much as sneeze, like, he would have died. It was by an artery. And he didn't trust anybody except for my great-grandfather. He was like, take me to Reverend Ray's parsonage. And I have seen photos of, like, him wrapped up, in bandages, and my great grandfather standing right next to him. So when my mother went to college, and she wrote this big paper on my great grandfather, and I still wasn't interested. I was just like, she was like, you got to read this. My mother was always pushing me towards Cornerstone, like, Jazz, like, this is your family legacy, like you. And I just wasn't interested. And then one day, so I was at Cornerstone getting footage because somebody wanted to do a documentary on me. So we're shooting footage, but we're in the church. And then I'm walking by the church, and they're like, well, what's that building? And I was like, I think it's a daycare. And they were like, well, let's walk in. So we walk in, and there's nobody at the desk. So this person comes out from the office, and she's like, hey, who are you? And I said, Jasmine Ray. And she was like, Ray? She started to cry. And like, all of this is literally on film. She started to cry. And she was like, I literally prayed for you. And I prayed for you. So within that moment, they wound up handing me a daycare center. And I was like, I don't know anything about daycare. And she was like, but this is all yours. This is all yours. And, that was when I got sucked in. I got sucked into everything, the legacy, but it was calling me for years, and I just was ignoring it. And then I'm telling you, from that moment, like, pastors would come to me and say, we're supposed to protect you. There's something that you're going to do in this lifetime. Like, we're supposed to protect you. We're here. Your great grandfather's like work in this city and his prayers, everything was passed down to you. Like, it skips 3 generations and it landed on you. So like really like interesting stuff started happening. My great grandfather baptized Hakeem Jeffries, who's literally the most powerful Democrat in the United States. And so, I went to Hakeem Jeffries, and I was like, what is this? And he was like, whatever you need, Jazz. And I was like, what is going on? Senator Velmanette Montgomery, same thing. I went to her and I was like, hey, I just got this daycare center. I'm having a little trouble with ACS. And she was like, what? She marched me into ACS to meet with a commissioner. And she told the commissioner in front of his whole staff, do you know who she is? And it's in the book. I was like, who am I? I was like, I don't know who I am. Who am I? She was like, do you know your pedigree? So I've inherited this legacy. And it's very ironic where I find myself today because, depending on what you believe, if you're a spiritual person, like, there's definitely a calling. And I'm navigating it right now.
In the book, you said, my great-grandfather was a visionary and a force of unwavering faith, a protector of kings. I was going to ask you what you meant by that, but everything you just said before that explains who he is, the type of man he was. And we just want to say thank you to Reverend Ray for everything he did, for people that look like you, that look like me, that look like my children. And we're just thankful for that.
Yeah, so beyond what he did in New York, he also, he was the first assembly member, Black. He was the first Black assembly member in the state of Ohio. Like, he also broke barriers, it wasn't just like Brooklyn. At the time where Ohio was highly racist, he was able to cross party lines, cross race, cross class, and he became the first Black elected official in the state of Ohio. He started the first credit union for Blacks. He started the first mental health clinic for Blacks. He did a lot beyond just, purchase a church in Bed-Stuy and manage a congregation. My dad used to tell me stories of at the height of Cornerstone, they had 5,500 members in the congregation, and they used to spill out to the street, and they used to have these speakers outside, and people used to just stand in the street to hear his sermons. So, he was very impactful. I to this day, if I see an elder at Cornerstone, I'll say, hey, did you know my great-grandfather? And and they just have stories. Like, he's a man of the people. He was always a man of the people. Man, they light up when they hear his name to this day.
Again, yeah, I don't think we're wrong in the analysis that it's not just the childhood you had, but it's also your legacy and what's already in you based on your family's history. And I want to go back to sports and you being a tomboy, and your uncle took you in running a dojo. I know you're a 4th degree black belt. Am I correct there? Former athlete. What did martial arts and softball teach you about how to control your anger as this kid who has so much anger and so much anxiety? What did all of these sports and activities do for you?
Yeah, it taught me discipline. When there was a pivotal moment where it was my anger, like controlling, the fight or the match. And I remember this one time, my cousin, Vanessa, she was doing Taekwondo. So I was like, oh, come to the dojo with me. And my uncle put us to fight. And we're the same age, same height, everything, same weight class. And, if you know anything about Taekwondo, they do these like really pretty kicks. And she caught me lovely, like kicked the shit out of me. And right when she caught me, my uncle yelled, "Yame," and that means stop. And I was like, why did you stop the fight? Like, I yelled at him in his own karate school. He was like, what? And in front of he stopped. So it was like a hot summer day. This karate school was like highly popular in Sunset Park. So people used to and they had this big glass wall. So people used to not just like walk by and stop and look in the window, but people used to sit down and like watch us fight. Every Saturday, the dojo was packed. There was probably like 50 people, like parents. And then there were people at the window outside. And I yelled at him in front of everybody. He said, what? And he said, I'll drop down and give me 100. I couldn't do 100 push-ups. And he was like, and we're not going to continue until you finish. So like he stopped the whole, it was like 90 degrees. I had my black gi on. My cousin just embarrassed me. And he was like, we're not going to finish class until you finish your 100 push-ups, right in the middle of everybody. That was a pivotal moment in my life because I learned I just learned how to control my mouth at that moment because I was so embarrassed. But I did my 100 push-ups in front of everybody. I remember my arms feeling like they were going to fall off, but he wasn't going to let me get away with that. And from that day on, I learned, I had this level of discipline. Like, I will not let myself get out of order, out of control. Even if I'm angry, I have a poker face.
When I was reading your book, Jasmine, I realized, I looked at the first page and it was like, this book is dedicated to Jonathan. I'm like, well, my name is Jonathan. What the heck is going on here? And then I seen the date. It said October 24th, 2009. My birthday is October 23rd. So I was like, all right, let me investigate this. This is getting a little, what's going on here? You mentioned earlier in an interview, you said you and your brother, and I know how much y'all looked alike, and your mother put the bow on your head. I know his anniversary is coming up, October 24th, 2009. I know he passed away. I know he was young. I know he was gifted. He was talented. If you don't mind, I know it's not something you talked about in detail, but I would like for you to talk about in detail about your brother, his memory. How was your childhood growing up together, and the tragic event that took his life, if you don't mind?
No, yeah, of course. So I have two brothers. I have Jason and I have Jonathan. She used to put the bow on my head to differentiate between me and Jason.
Okay.
Jonathan is 10 years younger than me. So when I was 10, he was born. And so he passed away when he was 16. So I was 26. And yeah, he was my little brother, but he also was like as soon as he was old enough and I was old enough, I took him everywhere, everywhere. I have photos of me and him just running around the city. So he passed away in a car accident. He was driving the car. And he was a star athlete. He played, he was a phenomenal baseball player and a phenomenal football player. And it's funny, I didn't put this in the book, but the day he passed away, the week that he passed away, we got a letter from Rutgers. They wanted him. As a sophomore, they wanted to recruit him. because they were like, this kid, like he was already, everybody wanted him. He was the #1 football player on Staten Island, #2 baseball player. No, #2 football player on Staten Island, #1 baseball player, like stats. So everybody, every college wanted him, and Rutgers gave my mother like a solid deal and was like, no, like we want him here. So when he passed away, like literally the letter was sitting on her dresser with the big red shiny R on it, because that's where he was gonna go. But anyway, he actually passed away on homecoming day, and it's so funny, like they won the game and they have so much footage of him like dancing at the time, like the song was, you're a jerk, you're a jerk. So like all the kids were jerking, and we have footage of like everybody in a circle and like he's in the middle doing the jerk, you know, like that. He was like that kid. He was cool, he could dance, everybody, you know, everybody loved him. But he didn't have a license to drive, and my mother was at a concert, left the keys on the hook. He went to go see a girl, and it was pouring outside, and he just he ran right into a pole. He didn't know how to operate the car. They said the lights were off, the windshield wipers were off. It was like he was just like driving blind. He had a passenger, a friend, who's now a police officer. His name is Tay Tay. And I remember Tay Tay also telling us that, you know, they didn't realize how fast they were going. But if I remember correctly, the insurance company said that he was going like over 85 miles per hour. Hydroplane, pouring rain, dark outside, no lights, no windshield wipers, just flying and smashed right into a pole. Tay Tay walked away without a scratch, not a scratch on him. And my brother just dead on arrival. So the crazy thing about that situation, and again, if you're a person of faith, like these are the things that have been happening throughout my lifetime. A couple of weeks before his accident, so he went to Moore Catholic High School, and him and my mother were in the kitchen debating about this Bible verse. And he kept saying John 16:7, John 16:7. And like I was overhearing their argument, but like I didn't get involved. And it's funny because that day, like it was the first day that I realized how big he was getting, and he was finally taller than me. And he would call me Mimi. So he was like, Mimi, I'm taller than you. I'm big, I'm stronger than you. And I was like, no, you're not. And he picked me up in the kitchen. He kept spinning me around. And I was like, put me down, put me down, put me down. And that I said to myself, oh my God, he's not a baby anymore. That's when I said it. I said that, you know, to myself in that moment. And so when he passed away, we were in the funeral home, and the woman, the administrator, was like, well, what do you want on his prayer card? And like, you know, my mother, everybody's crying. So I'm looking at my mother and I'm like, what do you keep saying that day? John 16:7, John 16:7. So the lady pulls out the Bible, she flips to John 16:7, and it says, you know, I have to leave now. And I understand that, you know, this is going to bring you grief, but I tell you the truth. If I don't go, the counselor will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. And like the lady like froze up, and she looked up at us like, what? And then I looked at my mom, I was like, he was telling us he was going to go. So that happened. But yeah, great kid, a lot of potential. And, you know, I don't, it happened, and I just, that's it. Yeah, I was on my path in that moment. Everything changed. Nothing else mattered. I was just like, okay, I'm listening, God. Like, how do you want me to serve? Because this did not happen for any reason. And literally from that day on, I was just on this incredible path.
It seemed like after that, you tried to turn your pain into your purpose. And I know you started a nonprofit. Can you talk to me about that? Yeah,
so I built the United States Wallball Association. One of the last memories I have of him, besides the spinning me in the kitchen, every time, we lived in Stapleton, so there was a handball court down the block, and we would play handball for bets, you know, $10, dishes, you do the dish. If I win, you know, you do the dishes. So we'd go down the block all the time and play handball against each other. And And so I literally did this handball tournament, and I bought these glass trophies, the Johnny Ray Memorial, and 150 kids showed up. And I was like, all I did was put a couple of flyers up and I put it up online. And I was like, where are you guys coming from? And they were like, we play handball. And I had no idea at the time that handball was so popular in New York City. So, the term fake it till you make it. I built a website and I built like a social media, and I said, okay, I'm gonna build this thing and I'll have a tournament next year. And at the time, that was the concept, is I'm just gonna have a couple of tournaments. And then I got hit up from people all around the world. Italy, Ireland, India were like, oh, are you the United States representative of Wallball? They kept calling it Wallball. And I'm like, what the fuck is Wallball? Like, we call it handball. And they were like, oh, well, over here we call it Wallball. And I was like, oh. So I incorporated Wallball, the United States Wallball Association. And I was like, yes, I am the United States representative for Wallball. And yeah, next thing you knew, I did that for 12 years and I traveled the world. I went to Italy, I went to China, I went to Colombia, you name it, I was there. And I was taking kids all around the world to play handball.
You said in your book it became bigger than the game.
Yeah.
It was about mentorship, mental health, anti-bullying, and education.
Mm-hmm.
How did working with all these kids all over the world help you heal your own inner child?
Yeah, so what I loved most about Wallball was that we were reaching inner city kids who didn't have the money to do anything else. They didn't have the money to play organized sports. They were pretty much locked out of organized sports because it was too expensive. And so it was life-changing for them. And then it became life-changing for me because when we would get off the plane, now you're talking about kids, poor kids, literally from New York City, who can't afford to play sports. But then we'd get off a plane in Colombia and they were Team USA. And I would have them in, windbreaker outfits, red, white, and blue. They had uniforms. At the time I had Red Bull. So when we got off the plane, we were Team USA and they were celebrities. Every country we landed in, these kids were celebrities. So you're talking about kids that live in NYCHA, that live in the projects. And when they got off the plane, they were Team USA. And we never went to a tournament that they didn't win. So I loved watching the transformation, them just like gaining confidence in, it was life-changing for me because it was life-changing for them. The other thing is, for the first 3 years, I was definitely known as a bitch because I was like, well, if you're gonna play in my tournament, it's free. I'm not gonna charge you anything, but these are the rules, right? And the rules were you had to show up on time. You had to come dressed appropriately. If you had beef with somebody in the park, I don't care. Like, you are not to disrespect anybody in the park. And no matter who wins or who loses, you have to shake hands before you get off the court. If you break any of those rules, you don't play. So I would have kids that were at each other's throats. But when they were in my tournament, I would watch them. Like, I'm watching you. Let me find out if you guys are going to fight. Because if you fight in my tournament, you know what's going to happen. And my tournaments were so cool that they didn't want to miss the next tournament. So like that transitioned to kids becoming friends. They hated each other, but I would make them shake hands before the match was over. The other thing is a lot of traumatized, angry people, right? So if the tournament started at 9 a.m. and you showed up at 9:02, you weren't playing. You weren't playing. So I remember this girl was like, I will fuck you up if you don't let me play. And I was like, sounds like fun. And she was like, I'm gonna flip your table. I said, touch my table, see what happens. I was like, I don't know who you think you are, but I'm not a paper pusher. So you come to my tournament wanting to fight, we're gonna scrap. I was like, I have your waiver right here. You wanna scrap? They were like, yo, she's crazy. That's how I treated these kids. I met them exactly where they were. And that particular girl wound up telling me, I don't know, she might have been 18 at the time. She's a nurse now. And she came back and she said, I learned time management playing in your tournaments. She was like, if it wasn't for you, I would have never became a nurse. You taught us all discipline. You taught us all how to be responsible. I would have never became a nurse if it wasn't for you. You know, I'm talking about a girl with tattoos all up and down her arms from the Bronx, from Fordham Road. Like, yo, you changed my life.
You're much, I think, worse than me in my nonprofit. I thought I was crazy. I think you're a little crazy. You might got it. But I would be a bad interviewer if I didn't bring up, you know what, your relationship with Mayor Eric Adams. That's what the New York Times is writing out. That's what the Daily News is writing about. That's what most of your interviews seem to be talking about.
I heard it went viral.
Yeah, I heard so too. And I think it's the perfect time to bring it up because you said Red Bull. And when you said Red Bull, my brain started to think of Barclays, Sweet. So let's go there. Take us back to that night at Barclays Center when you first met Eric Adams. What was going through your minds? Explain that experience for me.
I was actually annoyed because, I was occupying the suite at that time. I was a sports consultant for Red Bull, and I thought it was just, my suite for the night. And he walked in with a bunch of kids. He walked in with his son Jordan and a bunch of kids, and they just walked in and went straight for the food. And I was like, who are these people? And as I was distracted looking at the kids running around, he walked right up to me. He was like, hi, I'm Eric Adams. And I was like, okay, why are you here? And he was like, I'm the Brooklyn Borough president. And I was like, okay, I've raised discretionary money with council members. I understand the Assembly, the Senate, Congress. I've never heard of a borough president. Literally, I grew up in New York. I never heard of a borough president. So he explained to me what a borough president was. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Why are you in my suite? So that was our introduction. But he was relentless in trying to warm me up. He was like, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. He was very easygoing, smiles a lot. He had on this brown sweater, just very unassuming, really just a nice guy. And then we talk. And then I went back to the game and he gave me his card. He put his personal number on it. He was like, let's do some things in Brooklyn. And I was like, okay, cool. And that was day one.
You run in your book, he stood 6'2", wearing a crisp white shirt and a Mr. Rogers sweater, sporting the warmest smile I've ever seen. You described him as having a warm smile and quite confidence. What drew you in about him?
So he's definitely not 6'2". He's more like 5'11".
That's what I thought.
No, he's
I was
5'11".
about to ask, is he really 6'2"? Because when I seen him doing the pull-ups on the street sign on the Instagram video, I was like, I don't think he's that tall.
Unfortunately,
I'm also a
doing the
hater too
push-ups
because I'm
and
short,
pull-ups.
so it's all good.
No, he's not 6'2". So what was your question?
You just described him as having a warm smile, having this confidence about him. So I want to know, what drew you into him?
I wasn't drawn into him. It was like I said, he walked in. It's so funny because in getting to know him, all right, here's something I've never said out loud.
There we go.
And I hope he's okay with me saying it.
He'll be all right.
He told me, where's the camera? I apologize now.
No, look at this one. Right above me.
Okay, I apologize now. But
Gabe, clip this.
He told me he created Eric Adams. Eric Adams is a creation. Everything from the tone of his voice, the low register, to how he walks, shoulders back, back straight, spine straight. He created this person. It's sort of like his armor that he puts on every day. Because, he grew up dyslexic. He has a learning disability. And, he felt small as a child. So this was his way of putting on his armor, like a superhero would a cape. And so when he walked in, I remember that. I remember the stature. I remember the shoulders back. I remember the head high. And I was like, who is this guy? You know. But then he was warm and he smiled a lot and he was friendly, and I was like, okay, a little bit of a contradiction there. But I was intrigued. I was definitely intrigued.
So when did it go from being intrigued, or he's a professional, he's confident, all those good qualities of a strong black man, which I know from your dad you probably admired, from your grandfather you probably admired. When did it go from intrigue to admiration to this is intimacy?
Yeah, I remember the day. So we were in Woodland. You remember Woodland? Woodland was popping at one point in Brooklyn.
Nah, I don't.
Okay.
I'm a Bronx guy, sorry.
Bronx?
Yeah.
No comment. So Woodland was popping. And so it was on the corner of, I think, Flatbush. Anyway, so we were always in Woodland. Like, I would even say like probably like 2 to 3 times a week. And we'd always have the same seat, you know. But like this one particular night, he was like, I have a meeting downstairs, you know, do you want to come with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I go downstairs, and then it's like a cellar. Like everything is like, first of all, it really looked like the movies. Like you walk down and it's mad dark, and then all of a sudden like it looked like a cave. And I was like, where the hell are we? And that's underneath Woodland. So we walked through this like cave looking thing, and then this big wooden door opens, and then it's just like this private room, like this space. I mean, it wasn't big at all, but it was big enough to host the people that were sitting there. So I found out later on that these, you know, they were members of the union. I don't know what union, but these union guys standing there. And then there was a female senator sitting there. I was shocked to see her. I knew exactly who she was when I saw her. I was like, oh, Jesus. And then there was a guy there who became an assembly member. So I walk in and I'm like, I immediately feel like really uncomfortable, and I start like covering up because, you know, these are literally politicians that I've seen on TV. I know who they are. And I'm like, oh God. So, and I felt embarrassed because of course I'm like, you know, I got on this little tight dress and I'm with Eric Adams. I was like, oh, I feel stupid, you know? So I go and I sit in the corner of the room and I try to like be out the way, but I'm also like, what the hell is, I feel like this is like a movie, literally like powerful politicians in a room having a meeting. Anyway, right away, they start like arguing. And I was like, oh, damn, like this is getting like heated. And I literally, it got so heated, I swore somebody was gonna throw a fist. I was like, oh, there's a fight is about to happen in this room. And basically, these 2 white guys, they were like union reps. They didn't look like union reps because they were like buff. And they were hot too. I remember they were hot. But they were like, you know, they didn't have no hair, and they had these big tattoos, and they were like, you know, basically Eric was like, there's not enough minorities on the site. And Eric was like, so unless you got more Black and Spanish people there, like you ain't building that building. And that building's up right now, but that building wasn't up at the time. It's the tallest skyscraper, the building that, I think it was that building. And Eric was like, yeah, you're not building it until I see more Black and brown people on site. And I was like, oh, like, what? I didn't know the borough president could do that. And these guys were like, well, no, we went to OSHA, you know, they have to be OSHA certified. And Eric was like, okay, so certify them. You know, what have you done? And they were like, they don't even want to take the test. And Eric was like, did you put out flyers? Are you doing recruitment? Did you do any outreach? Like, what have you done to even show them that there's an opportunity here? And they were like, well, you know, like black people don't want to work. Like that was like their energy. Black people don't want to work. I'm not even gonna say what union that they're from, but that was the energy. Black people don't want to work. Spanish people don't want to work. And Eric was like, no, they want to work. You're not giving them an opportunity. So until I see you giving them opportunity, like I'm gonna challenge that building every step of the way. Like you're not gonna get my vote. And then like it got really heated. They started arguing. Like Eric had on a button-down white shirt and he started rolling up his sleeves. And I was like, oh my God. And then like the senator stood up and she was like, please guys, please. She had a shawl on. She was like, please guys, please calm down. And like, I remember just looking at Eric like, wow, that was hot. Like, well, that was cool. And yeah, and like one of the last things he said, he was just like, yeah, try me. Like, It's not going to happen. Like, watch. And then he was like, come on, Jazz. And I was like, oh, shit. I remember going back upstairs like, that was hot. You know, I didn't know what a borough president did. I saw it for the first time and I was like, wow. Like, there, you know, so it's funny because it really pisses me off because that's the stuff people don't see. That's the stuff that you can't say out loud. That's what he does behind the scenes. He makes sure that people have opportunity, that there's diversity, that there's equity. And he's not, it's funny because people love to say like, oh, the mayor's outside, you know, Mayor Hollywood, he's a showboat. He shows you what he wants you to see, but like the real work behind the scenes, like, I don't know anybody else doing it the way he's doing it. Like, I've been around other politicians. They're not doing that. They're not shaking things up. They're not giving people a hard time. Excuse my language, I was about to curse, but they're pay to play. I've seen, you'd be surprised. Yeah, I'm gonna give you the real deal. Behind the scenes, the politicians that are the loudest in front of the camera, that are like, yeah, let's protest. You know, they do, you know, these press conferences. The loudest ones behind the scenes are the quietest ones. The quietest ones. The performative ones, I'm not going to name any names, but all the people you always see online or, you know, giving press conferences or marching, those are the ones that are not putting in the real work. Eric is putting in the real work.
You talked a lot in your book about being his peace. What did peace look like for you? I think you guys were together for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
What was peace like? Like, what was it like being his peace? I know he's a busy man, a very important job. Talk to me about that. What did you mean by that when you said that in your book?
Well, like one of the things that we did a lot was we walked. Like Eric is like a walking contradiction. Like in front of the podium, he's very serious, you know. Behind the scenes, he's just not, he's like a kid. I mean, you know, he did the pull-ups on the light post, but like, he's like really spontaneous and funny and charming. And, you know, it's funny because when I dropped the book, I was like, let me just show people who you really are, because you're like not that guy. You're just not this like serious, mean, agitated, combative person. Like, let me just show people who you really are. And, you know, he was, no. That's what he said, no. And I was like, if people just knew how like authentic you really are, like authentic, I was like, New York can smell bullshit. They can smell bullshit. Like, if you don't just be yourself. But somebody who grew up with a learning disability wants to be everything but themselves. And so that's his internal battle. It's Eric versus Eric Adams, you know, who he thinks he needs to be for the world versus who he really is. And who he really is, to me, has always been enough. And that's what I've been trying to encourage him to be or to do for like these last 3 years. It's like, just show them who you are. He's afraid. So he has this big scar on the back of his head. Big scar, surgery scar. It's like this big. And it's still like sensitive when you touch it. And for whatever reason, like he would love, like I would like rub the back of his head and he'd always like do this like face. like do, you know, like when you pet a cat, not even a dog, but like when you pet a cat and they like it and they like lean into it and then they act all crazy, like he would do that, like don't stop. But it was sensitive, so I used to pinch it, massage it, and he would just like zone out. I used to think to myself in that moment, like, nobody else is touching your scar. Like it was like, you know, yeah, like nobody touches his scar. It's interesting, even just me saying that nobody touches his scars.
It's deep.
Yeah, no, it is. But that's what So I never even thought of that before actually saying it out loud. But that's what the cover of the book is, right? People think it's like sexual or it's salacious.
Okay, that makes sense.
The
now.
cover of the book is me covering his scar.
Wow.
I haven't said that out loud yet, but that is the cover of the book. The book is me covering his vulnerability to the world. People think that the book is salacious and that it's sexual and it doesn't have any sex in it. The book is about me protecting him. And that's the imagery, the significance of the cover of the book, which I haven't said out loud yet.
I just want to say a disclaimer. We're not political here by no means. I'm definitely not in the business of tearing down any black man or anything like that. And I just find it so intriguing how much you protect him. But I got this quote from the book.
10 years.
I know, but...
No, 12 years.
There's a quote I want to say.
Sure.
And because I admire you, like you're standing beside him, you're protecting him. It's obvious that your relationship is genuine. There's no bad blood here, and that's amazing. Right?
No.
That's amazing for y'all to say, hey, we're not together, but we still love each other, we still see each other, we understand each other in a wavelength that other people couldn't.
Yeah.
However, you wrote, he told me, you don't know it yet, but you're going to be my wife.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to get there, but there's some vulnerable moments where the Jasmine that was presented earlier today, the strong one, I'm not emotional, where he got you to that point. And I think that's because the love was genuine. But how do you overcome the fact that he made these promises to you? You said Eric Adams contradicts himself, and I feel like there's a lot of voters and people, and he's no longer in an election, but a lot of people feel like that's who he is as a man. He's a contradiction. Mm-hmm. And when I read your book, I see a contradiction. You have all these positive things to say about him, but he told you you were going to be his wife, and yet you're not. And things have happened. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. Listen, I love hard questions, so don't hold back. Uh-huh. So one, let me go back to your first statement, which was he's not in the election. He is in the election.
Oh, excuse me.
His name is on the ballot. His name is on the ballot.
Can you clarify that just for the people that's watching? I want to get this out before Election Day, so I just want to be very clear that, again, we're not a political show.
Yeah,
but
good.
Is he still running or he's not running?
So what he's done is suspended his campaign.
Okay.
Right? But he's still on the ballot. So one thing people get confused about is, suspending a campaign doesn't mean he's not in the election. He's still very much on the ballot. So you can still vote for him. Mm-hmm. The other thing is he's a Democrat. So just because he's running on an independent line doesn't mean he's not a Democrat. He just didn't participate in the primary, right? So during the primary, they choose who's going to represent each party. And so because he wasn't part of that process, he couldn't be on the Democratic line, so he decided to run as an independent. But he's still very much a Democrat. And yeah, I want people to know that he is a Democrat. The Democratic Party, I know you're not a political show. However, I just want to say this. The Democratic Party is very much trying to figure out what their identity is right now. Eric, I would consider Eric, and I think he would too, consider him a moderate, somebody that's like in the middle, somebody that likes to talk about bread and butter issues, safety, crime, sanitation, education. Then you have the other side of the party, which wants to talk about, whether or not we're going to build transgender bathrooms, right? That's not I'm not trying to insult anybody. I'm just saying, that's their most visible thing. It's like, we have to make sure that our Department of Education has transgender bathrooms or, bathrooms that don't discriminate. Where people in the middle are just like, I'm not discriminatory, I'm not prejudiced. We'll get to that. But first, the most pressing issue is affordability, crime, sanitation, right? So Eric is in the middle, just very basic kitchen table topics. And the party is going in another direction. They're becoming more socialist. They think that government should be bigger. And so the party itself is trying to figure out which direction it's going in. So this is going to be really interesting because I have been trying to encourage Eric to run again. I don't think he should have suspended his campaign. And if I could have it my way, he would be back in. Regardless of whether or not he's actively campaigning, he's still on the ballot. So I still encourage people to vote for him.
Thank you for that, for the clarification.
Sure.
Sorry about that. I don't want to misspeak. I want to make sure you
All good.
clarify that, because if he's on the ballot and still running, if you think Eric Adams is your candidate, by all means, make sure you go out and vote. And if you don't think, we recommend that all people vote for sure. But I want to go back to the original question of, he told you were going to be his wife.
Oh,
And-
yes. Sorry.
No,
I definitely
no,
wasn't
of
trying
course.
to
No, okay.
distract from that. Yeah.
I think I kind of interrupted
the
the question.
contradiction was,
Yeah.
that was the,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it was that. So in the book, actually in the last chapter, Love and Accountability, I said that you know, I don't have to destroy someone to survive them. Right? I don't feel like, you know, you can imagine, first of all, when the book dropped, everybody was like, what's the tea? There was no tea. It wasn't, you know, people were like, yes, like, destroy this man. And I was like, well, no, I was raised by a black man, so I don't even have it in me to want to destroy a black man. I don't care what they did. So I said that to say, I mean, we're still alive. He's never been married, so that's not to say that it's not going to happen. And even if it doesn't, that's okay.
Was there ever a moment in your relationship where you realized, like, maybe love and politics can't combine? Because I know you have a very political family. It seems like you was on your own way with nonprofit. You had your own big brand, which a lot of people don't want to talk about. And we want to clarify that today. Do you ever feel like it was like a love and politics thing just could not coexist within your relationship?
I think that he felt like the perception wasn't going to be accepted. I was like 30 or 31. He was 52. I'll say this too, which I haven't said anywhere. I wish I had my phone. But in 2015, it's almost like he was preparing me for like the breakup. So I was actually in China. I was in Shanghai. I remember I was looking out the window and he texted me and he was like, oh, you're living it up, you know? And I was like, like, this shit doesn't mean anything without you. I said that to him. And he was like, oh, you're gonna change your mind about me. Everybody does. And then like he referred to some article. He was like, read this article. You know, people change, you'll change too. And I literally said to him, okay, when I'm in my 40s, if I haven't, you owe me a lifetime. And I literally screenshot that text message and I still have it to this day. I recently showed it to him too. And I was like, you remember this? And he was like, I do remember that. And I said, okay, I'm in my 40s. So, you know, that's not to say that I'm still holding on to, you know, hope. I want him to be okay. Like I want people, you know, speaking of the contradiction, you know, I want people to see who he really is. And it's funny because when he read the book, he said, he hit me up at 3:00 in the morning. He broke night, read the book, broke night. And he hit me up at 3:00 in the morning. He was like, Jazz, I love the way you portrayed me. And I said, thanks. And he said, man, you did such a good job unpacking such tough topics. And I said, thanks. You know, and then he went on and on and on about all his favorite parts of the book. And I was like, glad you liked it. You know, and I was like, look, you were shitting on yourself trying to figure out what was in that book. And I said, and now you love it. He was like, man, I love the book. He loves the book. He loves the book. So it's funny because I just said to him yesterday, I said, look, people are, you know, I send him text messages every now and then when people send me things. You know, I forward it to him. I'm like, look, I got this text. And people are sending me things like, I wish this came out 6 months ago. People have said, like, man, he's deep. Like, is it too late to vote for him? Like, I'm getting an enormous amount. It's funny because week 1, it was viral. Like, I was offline. So I heard it was viral. I didn't see it. You know, every now and then my friends will send me stuff and I say, do me a favor, don't send me nothing. I don't want to know anything. So week 1, it went crazy. Week 2, things started to calm down and people started reading the book. And then the messages were, wow, he's really an amazing guy. Oh, wow, I wish I read this sooner. Oh, wow, I wish he would just be this guy for us. And I said, look, people want to know who you are. Like, what are the chances are, maybe we got 20 days, can we just be honest about who you are? This nice, silly, funny, charismatic, charming guy. Can you just stop being serious for 1 minute? He was like, no.
That's so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad in a way. It's sad. It's actually, to me, it's a tragedy. It's tragic.
I don't think his story's over.
No, I don't think his story is over by any stretch of the imagination. So
I think sometimes you got to be in a place where you just don't question what God got for you, and you just let the process happen. And I want to stick there about Mayor Eric Adams. What do you think he taught you about yourself?
What didn't he teach me?
I'm sorry, you told me I can ask the question.
No, you ask me anything. So like when he was borough president, he turned me on to Gaia, which is like this like platform for, people seeking, content about like, the universe, spirituality. He had me read books. He had me read The Organized Mind, You Are the Placebo. He turned me on to Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wasn't just somebody I was dating. He was like a mentor at the same time. He was, Eric is like wise. And that's another thing is like, he's like such a philosopher, like he can go on and on about things, thoughts, topics, he's always kind of like, he wants, and I mean, this part is in the book. It's like, he used to make he used to print out these like pamphlets. He used to talk, I don't know if you've ever heard about the story of the wolf, and it depends which one you feed, right? So I remember that one he printed out for his staff, and he had a staff meeting. There was Borough Hall has this huge wooden table. It's beautiful. The conference room in Borough Hall is like grand. Borough Hall is, to me, better than City Hall. It's beautiful. And so he had his whole team sitting around this conference table, and before he went in, he was like, Jazz, this is what I'm going to teach them today. And he was so excited about like the printouts that he made. And then I remember like flipping through them, and I'm like, I was like, this is great, but like half of them don't want to be on that journey with you. Like, I think this is an individual journey. But he was always so excited to like teach other people things that he's learning. Like, oh my God, I love the placebo. I'm going to buy everybody the book. And I was like, not everybody. Not only do they not want to read it, but they might not even be prepared to absorb the information. And I was like, so, you got to take it easy. But that's him. Like anybody that he loves, he's just loyal to a fault, and he wants to bring everybody with him. And not everybody is prepared to take that journey with him. And that was one of his downfalls. It's like he took a lot of people to City Hall that probably should have stayed at Borough Hall. There was a thing that I referred to called the Peter Principle. It's like a lot of people rose to their level of incompetence, and he couldn't see that. He just wanted everybody with him. And that was a lot of the chaos that he brought to City Hall.
Loyalty could be painful at a default.
Yeah.
Black man, mayor of probably the greatest city in the world. Excuse me.
No,
correct myself.
is.
The greatest city in
Right.
the world. So black man accomplished that. That's powerful. As like you said, what we're seeing on TV is not what's really happening to officers, right? You want to be there for black people. You want to, show all this love to your community and where you come from, and yet it seems like the community and the city has turned their back on him. As somebody who knows him in a way that most people can't say they know him, if he was standing here right here today, and I'm not gonna assume, I'm not even asking you to explain where he's at right now, but I only can imagine where his mental could be for somebody who has tried to give so much to the city, and yet the city feel like he hasn't, or people have their views about him.
Yeah.
What would you want to tell him right now to uplift him, to encourage him, to show him love, if you had 60 seconds to talk to him?
No, this is every day.
Well,
I spoke to him 3 times today. I spoke to him twice yesterday. No, every day I'm like, so here's the thing. I know you said, people have turned his back on him, the black community, blah, 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 blah. So I'll tell you 2 things. One, when I walk the street with him, I've never heard anybody say anything other than words of praise to him. On the ground, look, if you look on the internet and in the papers, you think he's the most hated man in New York City. When we're on the ground, there's people stopping him like a celebrity. Yo, Mayor Adams, keep going. We love you. Keep fighting. There's a disconnect. There's a big disconnect from what we see on the internet and what we see in the papers and what I've seen personally on the ground.
Can we stay right there and bring it back to Jasmine? Because that's the same thing that's happening now, right? When I read the Daily News, they're saying you're having intercourse with him in
Borough Hall.
Borough Hall.
Yeah.
When I look at the New York Times, yes, it's a better written article, but the first text messages I see, if the headline is $160,000, you don't deserve the job you have, and Eric Adams didn't give it to you.
Yeah.
So what do I supposed to believe, Jasmine? Because you're saying on the street we love him, but when we're in a TikTok world and we're in a 60-second real world where we're going to do everything it takes to show clips of this to the world, and people might only gravitate towards those clips instead of sitting down and saying, let me spend an hour and 30 minutes to learn a real Jasmine. Let me look at every word and not just this clip for me, because that's what the industry has taken us.
Yep.
So what do we do in that scenario? Should I believe that you and Eric Adams was having intercourse in Borough Hall, which would be a huge problem?
No.
Should I believe that you got a job that you didn't deserve? Like, how do we combat these journalism traits? I don't even consider myself a journalism, but I felt like I was damn near more prepared to talk to you about your life than half the people you have sat with, right?
But that's how I was going to respond. It's like people like you doing the responsible thing, right? Of taking a deeper dive, right? Anytime anybody tries to question my credentials for the job, I tell them all the same thing. You're foolish. Like, when I first started getting the calls, even before I dropped the book, remember there was an investigation. A lot of journalists around the city knew who I was. They knew I testified. I just never came out in the paper because they promised that they wouldn't put me in the paper. But journalists were calling me and saying, we know who you are. We know you had a relationship with him. We know he gave you a job. And I literally would tell them back then, which was like a year ago, you're going to be absolutely foolish to try to convince the general public that I'm not qualified for this job, because my life has been pretty public for the last decade. So all you have to do is scroll and you'll see that I've been doing sports since 2009. So good luck trying to convince people of that. And then the other thing is, like, people were like, oh, he created this job for you. No, he didn't. De Blasio created the office. He offered me a job when he was borough president. And I was like, nah, I'm good. When he first came into office, he was like, yo, there's a sports office. I think you'd be great for him. And I still was like, yeah, nah, I'm good. I didn't come on board until November. You know, he was sworn in January of 2022. I didn't come in until November because I was like, nah, I'm good. Like, I don't, I haven't worked for anybody in 15 years. Like, I don't really want to work for anybody. And he was like, man, this would be great for you. He was like, I know you know the job. I was like, no, of course I know the job. But then, like, when I started to take it serious, I wrote like this 5-page proposal, and I was like, okay, here's what I would do. And then he was like, this is exactly why I want you in there. Like, yo, you would kill it. I was like, okay, I'll come. So in a sense, like, not only was it not like a come up for me, but it actually hurt me, because I have the daycare center at Cornerstone, which is funded by the Department of Education. And so it created a conflict of interest for me. I had to step down as the executive director of my daycare center, because you can't occupy a role as an executive director that receives government funding and be an employee of the city at the same time. They're both funded by tax dollars. And so it created a conflict. So, accepting the position actually hurt me more than it helped me. And it wasn't a come up. I was making that money before I met Eric, before I even know who Eric Adams was. I was making that. So, it's people like you. I even say the New York Times, like, they wrote a very fair article. I hate the fact that, we are in the microwave generation where the headlines are what sells and, what people believe. But at the same time, like, I've never shied away from a challenge. That's why I was like, when Eric said, I'm gonna suspend my campaign, I was like, no. And he was like, no, Jazz, I was like, well, then I'm gonna drop the book, because I got 20 days to tell your story. I was like, I still wanna try. I wanna try. And that was my way of trying to tell his story. And it was very interesting, because it was like a live experiment. I dropped the book and it was like, scandal. I couldn't believe the way they were twisting the narrative. I was like, oh wow, he gave his girlfriend a job. It's 160,000. He created the office for her. They had sex in Borough Hall. I was like, wow, this is interesting. You know, I didn't take anything personal. I was really looking at it like, oh, this is where we are in society. Okay.
What do you want people to understand about you that the media got wrong?
You know what's crazy? If I'm being honest, I don't give a flying F what people think about me.
You could say the word if you want.
I really don't though. Like it doesn't, like half the time, you know, people were sending me TikToks and I was laughing. Like I thought it was funny. Look, I love the internet. That's the other thing is like, I love the creativity of the internet. I was dying laughing at some of the skits. Somebody made a whole song. Some dude did a whole skit. I was dying laughing. I didn't take none of that stuff serious. From the stuff that I saw, there were other things. My friends were like, stay off the internet. Don't read the comments. But I was like, you know, when I was running the United States Wallball Association, there was a moment in time where a lot of the kids were attacking me. You know, they were like, she slept with somebody at Red Bull. I was like, what? You know, because I was so mean to them, I was quote unquote mean to them, but I was trying to teach them something. And then, you know, over the years, they understood what I was trying to do. And then everything changed, you know, the tide turned and I earned their respect. And, you know, now they're like, please come back. But at that time, they were attacking me online. And I said to myself, this is happening for a reason. This is preparing me for something. I swear to God on my kids, I was like, this is preparing me for something. So I know, you know, I know what this is. And I'm just going to take it as preparation. So when I dropped the book and this craziness happened, I was like, there it is. You know, and I've had the same executive assistant for over 10 years. And she was like, you said this was preparing you for something. And I was like, well, there you go. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a single thing somebody said online or in an article that like hurt me. It just was like bouncing right off of me. I was like, oh, wow, okay, this doesn't bother me. So what do I want people to know about me? Nothing. Believe what you want to believe.
How do you respond to people who say your book is protecting him rather than holding him accountable?
I hold him accountable, probably. I would like to say more than a lot of people. I don't know who I don't know. I don't know who's in his circle holds him accountable. But I know that I was like the annoying friend from day one. Like, first of all, and it's funny because nobody's going to remember this, but he became mayor and then he started wearing these like aviator shades, like these cop shades. And I was like, bro, take those shades off. He was like, really? I was like, don't let me see those shades again. You know, he was really walking around like Miami Vice. And I was like, no, take those shades off. I was like, you're not a celebrity. You're a public servant. So he stopped wearing the shades. Then like, I think he made fun of like Kentucky or some state. And I was like, why are you starting fights? Stop, you know, so like along the way, like he did this whole thing with Florida. And I'm like, why are you poking people? Stop starting fights. Just too many fires. But on top of that, and I'll something else I'll give you that I haven't said out loud. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say who because that person will kill me. A couple of them will kill me. But a lot of elected officials call me about him. Jazz, he said this, he's doing this now. And I'm like, okay, I got it. You know, so we've had plenty of times where, you know, we've sat down and I'm like, like, have dinner with them, you know, clean that up. You know, we gotta unite. Like, we can't be fighting with our own people. So behind the scenes, always holding him accountable, always throughout, always. And again, those are the things that people don't see, right? I'm telling you right now, politics is very performative. It's theater. It's theater. Don't believe anything you see. Because I learned very early, I'm gonna tell you something else. I'm not gonna say the name, but there's a very big, like, activist who, was out there protesting all the time. And then one day I was in a room where they were like, well, we have to keep causing fires, because if there's no fires, then we don't have a job. And I was like, look at this. So it's almost like they want us to remain in chaos, because if there is no chaos, then they feel like they don't have a role to play. So believe it or not, government can do whatever government wants. Government can fix your problems. It just chooses not to. Believe that.
They have labeled you a mistress, but you call yourself a mirror.
They called me a mistress?
I've seen some articles that said that.
Oh, okay, all good, yeah.
But you call yourself a mirror for Eric Adams, and it seemed like based on your relationship, you are a reflection of him and you're trying to help him throughout his journey. What truth do you think you reflect back to the world with your relationship with him?
What truth?
Do you think you reflect back to him? You're saying you're a mirror, right? So what truth do you think you reflect back to him throughout his journey and to the people?
Yeah, you are enough. You are enough. He's wonderful. He's a wonderful human being. And like, even though I don't care what people think about me, I care what people think about him.
You could have stayed silent. Why now? Why you think it's time to tell y'all story?
Because I'm a fighter. Because my friend was being jumped. Because the media wasn't giving him a fair shake. There was sabotage within the administration. He was running an ineffective campaign. He was running an ineffective communication strategy. The campaign finance board wasn't giving him his matching funds. Like, literally, the deck was stacked against him. And so I felt like if I see my friend getting jumped, I'm gonna jump in. And I know how to fight. I know how to communicate. So, yeah.
Put that black belt to use?
That's that fighter. But also, it's funny because, people are talking about this come up. The day he told me he was leaving, I also quit. I quit my job. The day he was like, "Oh, Jazz, I'm going to suspend the campaign," I literally handed in my resignation. Like, if it was really a come up, why would I quit? I would just stay quiet and keep collecting my 160. I literally quit the same day. And I sold one of my houses. That was another thing. I had a house in Pennsylvania. I sold it. And I was like, okay, I'll close on this day. I'll quit on this day. I'm good. So, if anything, like, I sacrificed. I sold my house. I lost my health insurance. I quit my job. I lost my income. Like, yeah. No, when I say I fight, I fight.
I got 2 more questions for you. First one is there anything else you would like to leave the audience? Anything else that we would need to know about Jasmine on your journey? Any of your future ambitions, business ideas? Let it out to the audience. And also, there'll be a link here to buy her book in the description. If you want to know more about Jasmine, we're going to put all of that. There will be no ads from our company. We're not selling you nothing. Anything on the description will be to support Jasmine, her book. If you're more intrigued about the story, read the story. Buy the book. Don't just assume what you read. That's what good humans do.
So, thank you.
After you read the book, your opinion is your opinion. That's between you and God. But anything you want to say, Jasmine, to the audience before I ask you my final question?
Yeah, vote for Eric Adams. I mean, that's why I did all this, because I want people, now that I have your attention, I think New York City got it wrong. Look, if you watched the last debate, you want one of those guys running the city? Like, I could go on and on about the accomplishments of our administration. Containerizing trash, lowering crime, passing the City of Yes, which allows us to build housing. We rezone, like, the whole supply and demand challenge, we address that. We just need time, right? This whole thing about freeze the rent, that's not going to solve your problems. The problem was created way before him. We addressed the problem by passing the City of Yes. We need time to build. But when we have more supply, there will be less demand. And now the landlords are going to have to lower their prices to be competitive. And that's how we're going to right size the affordability crisis. We brought down crime. Our kids are beating the state in math and reading. New York City kids are beating New York City State in math and reading scores right now. Broadway just had its best year in its history. This is all happening while Eric is the mayor. So I don't understand how you can look at him and his legacy and say, we need to replace him. Really? Look at the city's actually doing well. I understand how people feel. The data points to something completely different. And for me, that means that there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a disconnect between what is actually happening versus what actually took place during the administration. That and, a lot of the things that people are feeling in terms of like affordability is, Eric has tried to address those things, but we're talking about the federal government here. Like, this is a federal problem. The reason why there is an affordability crisis, it's not because, yes, housing is definitely a big one, and that's happening across the country. That's not specific to New York City. But it's because our government keeps printing money. That's why. Because the value of our dollar is constantly decreasing. That's where the affordability crisis is coming into play. It's because we have to stop printing money. We're just devaluing our dollar. Things are more expensive because of that. So this is a federal problem. This is not a city problem. But Eric has tried to address those things in Axe the Tax and City of Yes. So the man deserves his second term. Yeah, and he's still on the ballot. That's what I would want people to know. I want to drive that point home. As far as me, I'm good. Life is great. I have 2 kids. I have my house. I have my health. My kids are healthy. I have my German Shepherd. Life is good. Life is great.
German Shepherds, great dogs.
So listen, that was my dream dog. And I literally, I just prayed for it. And I got this beautiful, and he's an adopted dog too. I adopted him and he was beautiful. So life is good. No complaints.
So we'll end it here. And it's specifically about Jasmine Ray. Finish this sentence for me. I wasn't supposed to be here, but.
But I was assigned a mission. I feel it. I feel it in my bones that I'm on a journey. And this feels like the beginning of it still. I think we're in the beginning of something. Yeah, I'm on a mission.
Thank you, Jasmine. I appreciate you.
Thank you.